He called my life's work a hobby while demanding I sacrifice it to save his skin. My daughter just stood there, nodding. They thought the old craftsman was finished. They were about to learn that I don't just build furniture. I dismantle threats. If you're listening to this story, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. It helps more than you know. Because the day it all fell apart started just like any other Tuesday. Until the doors opened. The tranquility shattered. The heavy front doors burst open. The noise was jarring. An intrusion in a place of quiet focus. It felt like an invasion, and the invaders were my own blood. Two figures stood against the harsh sunlight. Emily and her husband, David. They didn't belong here. Their presence felt wrong, like a stain on unfinished wood. Emily wore a sharp, tailored suit. It probably cost more than my monthly utility bill. She looked around the workshop with a flicker of distaste, like she smelled something rotten. David, tall and impeccably groomed, wore his usual bored arrogance. His expensive Italian shoes clicked loudly on the concrete floor, out of place amidst the machinery and the sawdust. They were walking toward me like they owned the place, and that's when the dread started. A cold knot forming in my stomach. My business partner Michael looked up from the lathe. He was turning a table leg. Michael had been with me for 25 years. He was more than a partner. He was the brother I never had. He caught my eye, frowned slightly. He sensed the tension that suddenly filled the air. The air felt thick, heavy, like right before a storm breaks. Michael wiped his hands on a rag, his eyes fixed on David. He never liked David. Michael always said the man's hands were too soft for an honest day's work. Turns out he was right. But even Michael couldn't guess how dirty those hands really were. Dad, we need to talk. Couldn't guess how dirty those hands really were. Dad, we need to talk. Now, Emily announced. Her voice was sharp. It cut through the silence. No hello. No how are you. Just a demand. The same tone she used when she was 16 and wanted the car keys, but the stakes were much higher now. I took a slow breath. My chest felt tight. The hammering started in my chest. I'm busy, Emily, I said, keeping my voice even. We have deadlines. The Harrison Commission is due Friday. I pointed to the walnut cabinet. Pride swelled in my chest. It was some of my best work. But they didn't even look at it. They were looking right through me, like I was already gone. David scoffed. He walked over to the walnut cabinet, the masterpiece I'd just finished. He ran a hand over the finish. His touch felt like a violation. He didn't see the beauty. He only saw the price tag. He inspected it with the casual disdain of someone who understands price, but not value. He tapped the side of the cabinet with his knuckles. The sound was dull, disrespectful. The air in the workshop thickened. Michael stopped the lathe. The sudden silence was deafening, and in that silence, the war began. David looked at me. A smirk played on his lips. His eyes were cold, arrogant. He was enjoying this. He always enjoyed making others feel small. It was his only real talent. Must be nice, Robert, he said. His voice dripped with sarcasm. I waited. I knew what was coming. The familiar sting of his contempt. I braced myself for the impact. I could feel Michael bristling beside me. I gave him a slight shake of my head. Not yet. Playing with wood all day, he continued. He gestured around the workshop with a dismissive wave of his hand. A quaint little hobby. A hobby, 35 years of sweat. Sacrifice, passion, Linda's sleepless nights doing the books. My missed holidays, all dismissed in a single word.
He leaned closer.
Meanwhile, I'm out here dealing with a real-world crisis. The words landed like a punch to the gut. They knocked the wind out of me. My throat tightened. I wanted to scream at him. To defend my life's work, to tell him that his real world was built on sand. But I didn't. I just stared at him. My silence was colder than his words. I wouldn't let him see me break. Not here, not in the sanctuary I built. But the crack had formed, and it was deeper than I thought. The foundation of my family was crumbling, and I was standing in the ruin. Before I could respond, Emily stepped forward. She reached into her designer handbag. She pulled out a thick stack of papers. She didn't hand them to me. She slapped them down onto my drafting table. The papers scattered across my blueprint. They covered the intricate designs I had spent weeks perfecting. The disrespect was intentional. A power play. A way to show me who was in charge. A way to tell me that my work didn't matter, only their crisis mattered. They were making a big mistake. I looked down. Bank statements, legal notices, demand letters stamped in angry red ink. It was a mess of financial jargon and legal threats. I didn't need my glasses to see the number glaring up at me from the summary page. It was a number that made my stomach drop to $500,000. $500,000. The number hung in the air, suffocating me. It was almost the exact amount I had saved for my retirement. Coincidence? I didn't think so. What is this? I asked. A cold dread was settling in my stomach. The air felt thin, hard to breathe. I knew the answer, but I needed to hear her say it. I needed to see how cold she really was. It's David's situation, Emily said. Her voice was flat. No emotion, like she was discussing the weather or a parking ticket. A business venture didn't pan out, she continued, smoothing her skirt. A nervous habit she had since she was a child. The market shifted unexpectedly. Lies, she always smoothed her clothes when she lied. David chimed in, his voice smooth, practiced. The voice of a con man. It happens, Robert. High finance is a risky game. I just need a bridge loan to cover the losses. A bridge loan, he said it so casually, as if he were asking for a cup of sugar. Not my life savings. $500,000. It wasn't just money. It was my liquidity, the capital for materials, for payroll, for emergencies. It was my security. It was the fruit of a lifetime of labor. It was everything, and they wanted it gone overnight. Just like that. The audacity was breathtaking, and the cruelty was paralyzing. But only for a moment. You expect me to cover this? I asked. My voice was barely a whisper. I looked from the papers to David's arrogant, expectant face. He didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. Emily crossed her arms. Her eyes narrowed slightly. She knew she was asking the impossible, but she didn't care. She looked at me like I was a bank account, not a father. The silence stretched between us, tense, uncomfortable. They were waiting for my surrender. They were waiting for me to cave, like I always did. I need the money tomorrow, Emily demanded. Her voice rose sharply. It echoed in the workshop. She pointed at the papers like they were a weapon aimed at my heart. By noon, Dad, she continued, her voice cold and hard. We have to fix this, or we lose everything. The entitlement was staggering. They stood there, in the center of the legacy I built for them, demanding I dismantle it to clean up their mess. They didn't ask. They demanded. That was the difference, and that difference changed everything. My hands clenched into fists. The nails bit into my palms. I forced them to relax, show no weakness. I looked at my daughter, my only child. The little girl I taught to ride a bike, the girl I held when she cried, and I felt nothing. No love, no pity, just a cold, empty void. She had chosen her side, and it wasn't mine. The realization hit me like a physical blow. I was alone in this fight. And if I was going to survive, I had to be as ruthless as they were. Everything, I repeated. The word tasted like ash. What exactly is everything, Emily? Define it. She flinched, a flicker of guilt in her eyes. But it was quickly replaced by defiance. She hated being questioned. The house, Dad, she said, her voice trembling slightly with manufactured emotion. The cars, our life. Our standing in the community. The house I helped you buy? I asked, my voice rising. I couldn't keep the anger out anymore. The cars you lease, the vacations you take, the life you live, funded by money you didn't earn. I was trying to reach her, to make her see reason, to shame her. I was wasting my breath. That's not fair, Emily snapped, her eyes flashing with anger. We work hard for what we have. You don't understand the pressure we're under. Work hard? I scoffed. The sound was harsh. Ugly. David spends more time on the golf course than in the office. And you, Emily? When was the last time you created something real? Something lasting? She looked away. She couldn't meet my eyes, because she knew I was right. Their life was a house of cards, built on debt and deception. And it was about to collapse, and they wanted me to be the one buried under the rubble. David stepped closer, invading my space. He smelled of expensive cologne, And beneath it, something else. Something sour, desperation. He was a cornered animal, and that made him dangerous. He lowered his voice. The friendly mask dropped. His eyes were cold, hard. He glanced at Michael, then back at me. He wanted to isolate me, to make me feel powerless. "Listen, Robert," he said, his voice low and menacing. The civility was gone. "This isn't a negotiation." He paused, letting the words hang in the air. The threat was palpable. The air crackled with it. "My reputation is on the line," he continued. "If this gets out, I'm ruined." He glanced around the workshop. His eyes swept over the tools, the wood, the craftsmen who depended on me. "And I won't be the only one," he added, his voice smooth as silk, "but laced with poison. It would be a shame if your little business got dragged into my mess," he said. "Bad publicity, financial instability. It can kill a company like this overnight." He leaned closer, his breath hot on my face. "Clients get nervous. Orders get canceled. You wouldn't want that, would you?" My blood ran cold. He wasn't just asking for money anymore. This was something else entirely, something much darker. Blackmail. He was threatening me. Not just my finances, my legacy, the name I had built, the reputation I guarded so fiercely. He was willing to burn it all down to save himself, and he was enjoying it. The power he thought he had over me. This was the first major betrayal.
Undeniable.
Vicious. It cut deeper than any insult. It was a declaration of war. And Emily, my daughter, she stood right beside him, her face impassive. Her silence screamed her complicity. She was holding the knife with him. That hurt more than David's threats. The realization that she was willing to sacrifice me for him, for their lifestyle. "And no delays," David added. He jabbed his finger at my chest. I felt the pressure. It was meant to intimidate. "Noon tomorrow. A cashier's check. If you try anything funny, if you hesitate for a second, you'll regret it. I promise you." They were serious, deadly serious. And they didn't care who they hurt. They thought they held all the cards. They were wrong. I looked at Emily. I searched her eyes for a flicker of remorse. A hint of the sweet girl who used to sit on my workbench, building birdhouses with me, her face smeared with sawdust and glue. I searched for the daughter Linda had raised to be kind, honest, and strong. I found nothing, only a cold, hard reflection of the man she married. My heart broke, right there, on the workshop floor. But I didn't let them see it. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction. A strange calm settled over me. The shock, the pain, the fear. It all receded, replaced by a clarity as sharp and cold as a chisel. I looked at their desperate greed, their utter disregard for everything I valued. I thought of Linda, how heartbroken she would be. Not by the loss of the money, but by the loss of her daughter's soul. I realized things couldn't continue like this. I couldn't let them destroy everything I had built. I wouldn't. This was my breaking point. The moment the victim died, and the fighter was born, I leaned back against the drafting table, and I smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a craftsman who just realized the wood he was working with was rotten to the core, and rotten wood needs to be cut out. "Okay," I said softly. The word hung in the air. Simple. Final. They had no idea what it truly meant. They heard surrender. I meant war. Emily and David visibly relaxed. The tension drained from their faces, replaced by relief, a sickening sense of victory. They thought they had won. They thought I was weak. A foolish old man, easily manipulated and discarded. They were so wrong. "Good," Emily said. She brushed imaginary dust off her sleeve, a habit she had when she felt superior. "We knew you'd see reason, Dad. We'll meet you here tomorrow, at 11:30 to pick up the check." "Okay," I repeated, the smile still fixed on my face. They turned and left. Their footsteps echoed in the sudden silence. The heavy workshop doors closed behind them, sealing the silence, leaving me alone with the scent of mahogany and the bitter taste of betrayal. They had no idea what they had just started. They had underestimated the old craftsman, and that would be their downfall. The hunter had become the hunted. The moment the doors closed, the smile dropped from my face. My hands were shaking, not with fear, but with a cold, burning anger. Michael was at my side instantly, his face pale with shock and fury. "Robert, what was that? $500,000? You can't be serious. You can't give them the money." He was frantic, pacing the workshop floor, running his hands through his hair. "They blackmailed you, Robert, in your own workshop." In your own workshop. I just stood there, silent, letting the anger wash over me, fueling my resolve. I needed the anger, it was the fuel for the fire I was about to ignite. I walked over to the office. My legs felt heavy. I sat down at my desk. The desk Linda used to use when she kept the books. Her picture was still there, smiling at me, her eyes full of warmth and wisdom. I needed her strength now. I told them okay. I didn't say I would pay. I said. My voice was quiet, firm. Michael stopped pacing. He looked at me, confused. "But you agreed. Robert, you can't play games with these people. They are vicious. That vulture David will bleed you dry." Michael argued, his voice rising in panic. "He won't stop at 500,000. He'll come back for more. Again and again, until there's nothing left. He will destroy us, Robert." "He won't," I said. I picked up the stack of papers they had left behind. My eyes scanned the documents. The names of the creditors, the dates, the amounts. I was looking for a pattern, a weakness. "Because I'm going to dismantle him," I said, piece by piece, like a poorly built chair. I looked up at Michael, my resolve hardening. "They think they can destroy my legacy. They're wrong. I'm going to use their own greed to destroy them." The plan was forming in my mind, intricate, precise, ruthless. It required the skill of a master craftsman and the heart of a warrior. I was no longer the victim. I was the craftsman, reshaping my future, and I was ready for war. But first, I needed information. "I need you to do something for me, Michael," I said. "David said it was a business venture, a market shift. I don't believe him. He's a liar." I pointed at the demand letters. "These look personal, Michael. Not corporate. The amounts are too round. The deadline's too tight. I need you to find out what really happened." I needed the truth, no matter how ugly it was, and I needed it fast. The clock was ticking. Michael nodded, his jaw set. "I know someone," he said, his voice low. "A private investigator. Discreet. Expensive. But very effective. He used to work for the Financial Crimes Unit. His name is Jake. People call him the Fixer." The Fixer? The name sounded ominous, dangerous, perfect. "Call him," I said. "Tell him we need answers, and we need them now. Tell him money is no object." I was willing to spend every penny I had to expose the truth. "Be careful, Robert," Michael warned me. "David is desperate. He's like a cornered animal. He might be dangerous." Michael paused. His eyes swept over the workshop, the life we had built together. "He's connected to some shady people," Michael said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I heard rumors. Gambling debts. Loan sharks. If we push too hard, they might push back. Hard." The first real fear hit me. Were we willing to risk the safety of the business, of our employees, our lives, just to expose him? It was a terrifying thought. Was the truth worth the risk? I looked at Linda's picture. I knew what she would say. Integrity means doing the right thing, even when it's dangerous. "We have to know what we're dealing with, Michael," I said, my voice firm. "The truth is the only weapon we have." We proceed, but with caution. Michael nodded slowly. He understood the gravity of the situation. He left the office, pulling out his phone, his face grim. I was alone. The silence was heavy. I looked at the clock. 5:00 p.m. I had less than 24 hours to save my legacy, and to teach my daughter a lesson she would never forget. But first, I had to protect what I had built. I had to secure the fortress. I picked up the phone. I called my lawyer, John Harrison. He handled my estate planning, the business incorporation. He was a man of integrity, a rare breed in his profession. He always wore a bow tie, a quirk that Linda found endearing. He was sharp, meticulous, and fiercely loyal. "Robert, good to hear from you. How's the workshop?" he asked cheerfully. "John, I need your help," I said. My voice cracked slightly, the weight of the situation hitting me all at once. "I'm in trouble, and I need you to act quickly and discreetly." I explained the situation. The demand, the threat, the blackmail. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. A silence that said more than words ever could. $500,000? John whispered, shocked. "And your daughter is involved?" "Robert, this is extortion." "Yes," I said, "and I need to protect the business. I need to move my assets, everything, out of their reach. Immediately." I told him what I wanted to do. It was drastic. A legal maneuver usually reserved for extreme financial distress or imminent bankruptcy. I was preparing for the worst, was preparing for financial Armageddon. John's response was immediate and worrying. "Robert, this is highly irregular," he warned, his voice filled with concern. "If you transfer ownership of the business and your personal assets so suddenly, it could be seen as fraudulent conveyance." Fraudulent conveyance. The words hit hard. It sounded criminal. "If David's creditors find out," John continued, "they could sue you. They could pierce the corporate veil. You could lose everything anyway. Unfaced legal charges, jail time. I was risking my freedom to save my legacy. I had to decide if I was willing to potentially break the law to achieve justice. The walls were closing in. "John, I understand the risks," I said. My voice was steady, even though my heart was pounding. "But if I don't do this, there will be nothing left to lose. I have to protect what I've built. I have to protect my employees." I gripped the phone tighter. "We have to find a legal way to do this. A loophole, a technicality, anything. I trust you, John." John sighed heavily. Sound I knew meant he was deeply troubled, but willing to fight. "Okay, Robert, I'll see what I can do. I'll drop the papers. I'll work through the night if I have to. But we have to be careful, very careful." He hung up. I was alone again, with the weight of the world on my shoulders. The clock was ticking, and the shadows were lengthening. I walked back into the workshop. It was quiet now. The machines silent. The employees had gone home. Except for one. Sarah, my young apprentice. She was sweeping up the sawdust around the lathe. Her movements, careful, precise. She was talented, dedicated. She had a passion for the craft that reminded me of myself when I was young. She absorbed every lesson, respected every tool, cherished every piece of wood. She had the soul of a craftsman. In the past few years, as Emily drifted away, Sarah had become like a daughter to me, the daughter Emily had stopped being. And she was the key to everything. "Sarah," I called out. She looked up, surprised to see me. She bit her lip nervously, a habit she had when she was worried. "Mr. Miller, is everything okay? You look troubled. I heard shouting earlier." "I need your help with a very important project," I said, walking towards her. "A very special commission." Sarah looked confused, worried. "A commission? Now? It's late, Mr. Miller." She hesitated, her eyes searching mine. "Are you in trouble? Is there anything I can do to help?" "Truly help?" I had to decide how much to reveal. I couldn't tell her the whole truth. Not yet. It would put her in danger. But I needed her trust, her cooperation. I needed her skill. I had to lie to the one person who had been completely honest with me. That was the hardest part of the whole plan. It felt like another betrayal. "It's a surprise," I said, forcing a smile. It felt brittle on my face. A very important surprise for someone who deserves it. But it requires the utmost precision and discretion. "Can I count on you?" Sarah looked into my eyes. She saw the seriousness behind the forced smile, the pain I was trying to hide. She nodded, her loyalty unwavering. "Of course, Mr. Miller. Anything you need. You know that." We were about to build a coffin for David's greed, a masterpiece of revenge. We started working. The night was just beginning, and the masterpiece was taking shape. The sound of the saw cutting through the wood was a welcome distraction from the chaos in my head. We worked for hours. I selected the finest pieces of mahogany, the ones I had been saving for a masterpiece. The grain was deep, rich, almost alive. We started building a box, not just any box, a work of art. Intricate carvings depicting the history of the workshop, hidden compartments, a complex locking mechanism. It required a specific sequence of movements to open. A puzzle box. It was a testament to the craft I loved, symbol of the legacy I was fighting to protect. Sarah worked with a focus that amazed me. She understood the importance of this project. Even without knowing the details, she was crafting my revenge and securing her future. While Sarah worked on the carvings, I waited for Michael. The silence of the workshop was usually comforting. Tonight it felt ominous, like the calm before the storm. Michael returned around 9 p.m. He looked exhausted, his face grim. He didn't come back alone. A man stepped out of the shadows behind him. Tall, thin, wearing a suit that looked cheap and wrinkled. He looked around the workshop nervously, his eyes darting back and forth. He clutched a worn leather briefcase like a shield. He looked like a man who lived in the shadows. "Robert, this is Jake, the fixer," Michael said, his voice low. He didn't use a last name. "He's the investigator I told you about. He found something. Something big." Jake nodded curtly. He didn't offer his hand. He smelled of stale cigarette smoke and fear. "You're looking into David?" he asked, his voice raspy. "You should be careful. He swims in deep waters with sharks. Big sharks. I need to know what happened to the money," I said, ignoring the warning. I didn't care about the sharks. I was ready to face them. Jake pulled out a flask. He took a long drink. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "It's worse than you think," he said. His eyes met mine. They were cold and calculating. He had seen it all before. My stomach tightened. I braced myself for the hidden truth. The secret that would change everything. "It's not a business debt," Jake said, his voice low. "It's not gambling or loan sharks either. It's embezzlement." I stared at him. The word hung in the air like a toxic fume. Embezzlement. David was stealing from his clients, Jake continued, his voice filled with professional detachment. He was running a Ponzi scheme, a classic one, using new investments to pay off old ones, creating fake returns, living high on the hog on stolen money. He paused, letting the words sink in. It finally collapsed, like they always do. He got caught. I felt sick. It wasn't just recklessness. It was criminal. He had built his life on lies and theft. He had dragged my daughter into his sordid world, but the worst was yet to come. The real betrayal was still waiting in the shadows, and it was about to step into the light. "Who caught him?" I asked, my voice tight. "One of his clients," Jake said. "A man named Sterling. Arthur Sterling." The name meant nothing to me, but the description did. "Sterling is not a forgiving man," Jake warned. "He's wealthy, powerful, and ruthless. He built his empire from the ground up. He doesn't just sue, he destroys lives. He makes examples of people who cross him. Arthur Sterling, a name that sent shivers down the spine of the financial world. A man known for his impeccable suits and his icy demeanor. Sterling gave David until noon tomorrow to pay back the $500,000, Jake continued, or he would press charges, and the whole thing would go public. He promised David he would bury him. He looked me straight in the eye. And if Sterling goes public, David goes to jail. For a very long time, Sterling has judges in his pocket. David wasn't just desperate, he was terrified, and that made him even more dangerous. But it also made him sloppy. If this story is keeping you hooked, drop a subscribe, because the next revelation shattered what was left of my heart. "There's more, Robert," Michael said, looking uncomfortable. He pushed a printout across the desk. It was a bank statement from Jake's briefcase. Jake leaned forward. "The rabbit hole goes deeper than you think, old man. The rot spreads." I looked at the statement, my eyes focused on the names listed on the account, and then I saw it, the deeper betrayal. The final, devastating blow. "Emily knew," Michael said, his voice barely a whisper. The twist. The final, devastating realization. My own daughter. A thief. She didn't just know. She helped him, Jake clarified, pointing at the transaction history. Her name is on the main slush account. She was actively participating in the fraud, moving money, creating fake documents. She's as guilty as he is. The betrayal was complete. She wasn't a victim. She was an accomplice. I looked at the bank statement. The numbers blurred before my eyes. I felt a surge of rage, a desire to confront them, to scream at them, to ask them how they could do this. To me, to Linda's memory, but I knew that would be a mistake. It would give them time to react, to run, to hide the evidence, and it would expose my hand. I had to stick to the plan. I had to be cold, calculating, ruthless. They deserve everything that's coming to them, Michael said angrily. We should call the police right now. Jake just watched me, waiting for my reaction, waiting to see if I would break. No, I said, my voice calm, the rage replaced by a cold determination. My transformation was complete. Calling the police is too easy. They deserve more than that. I looked at the evidence on the desk. They deserve a lesson in craftsmanship, in integrity, in consequences. Jake nodded slowly, a flicker of respect in his eyes. He handed me the thick folder containing all the evidence. It's all there, enough to bury them both. Sterling will be very interested in this. Good luck, old man. You're going to need it. He turned and disappeared back into the shadows, as quickly as he had arrived, leaving me with the ugly truth and the weapon I needed to destroy them. Mr. Harrison called around midnight. It's done, Robert, he said, his voice tired but relieved. We found a way. It's complicated, involving a trust and a rapid incorporation, but it's legal. Ironclad. The ownership of the workshop and your personal assets have been transferred. Transferred to whom? Michael asked, confused. I looked at the office door. Sarah was visible through the window, focused on her work, oblivious to the drama unfolding around her. To someone who deserves it, I said. To someone who understands the true value of the legacy. I signed the documents electronically, transferring the ownership of Miller's Custom Furnishings to Sarah. It was the right thing to do, the only thing to do. I looked at the clock. 1 hour 8 a.m. Exactly 8 hours since Emily and David had ambushed me. The trap was set. Now I just had to disappear and wait for the mice to arrive. I went home. The house felt empty and cold without Linda. It was filled with memories that now felt tainted by Emily's betrayal. I packed a suitcase, a small one. Clothes, toiletries, my sketchbook. I was leaving everything behind. The memories, the pain, the betrayal. I was starting over. As I packed, I looked at a photo on my nightstand. Linda and Emily, taken years ago at a craft fair. Emily was holding a small wooden horse I had carved for her. She was smiling, her eyes bright with innocence. My heart ached. A profound sadness washed over me. Was I doing the right thing? Was I abandoning my daughter when she needed me the most? Was I being too harsh, too unforgiving? A tear escaped my eye. I wiped it away quickly. I couldn't afford to be weak, but then I remembered the coldness in her eyes, the entitlement in her voice. She wasn't asking for help. She was demanding a sacrifice. And she was a criminal. Linda always believed in accountability. She would not tolerate Emily's behavior. She would want me to teach her strength, not enable her weakness. I closed the suitcase. My resolve hardened. I was doing this for Linda, for myself, and, in a strange way, for Emily too. She needed to learn that actions had consequences, painful consequences. I walked out of the house, leaving the memories behind. I didn't look back. I was already gone. I went back to the workshop. The box was finished. It was beautiful, magnificent, a masterpiece, the finest thing I had ever built. I placed the documents inside, the evidence of David's embezzlement, the proof of Emily's complicity, the deed to the workshop in Sarah's name, and a letter. The final nail in their coffin. I locked the box, the complex mechanism clicking into place. The secret to opening it was known only to me and Sarah. It was a secret they would never guess. A secret hidden in the grain of the wood. Michael was waiting by his car. He looked at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and admiration. "Are you sure about this, Robert?" he asked, his voice thick with emotion. "There's no going back. I've never been more sure of anything in my life," I said. We drove to the airport in silence. The sun was starting to rise, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. A new day, a new beginning, but the calm wouldn't last long. The storm was coming. As we pulled up to the departures terminal, Michael's phone rang. He answered it, his expression suddenly tense. "Hey, Robert," Michael said, his voice urgent. "It's Jake. David is getting suspicious." My heart pounded. The climax was about to begin. "He's been calling your bank," Michael continued, "asking about your accounts. They didn't tell him anything, but he knows something is wrong. He's panicking. He might come to the workshop early. But that wasn't the worst part. And Jake says Sterling's men are watching the workshop," Michael added, his voice trembling slightly. "They might make a move if David doesn't pay. They aren't police, Robert. They are dangerous." The time was running out. The plan was hanging by a thread. We were caught between the criminals and the sharks. I had to move fast. I nodded. "Goodbye, Michael. Take care of the workshop. Take care of Sarah, and be safe." "I will, Robert. Godspeed." I grabbed my suitcase and walked into the terminal. I didn't look back. I was leaving the battlefield. The war was about to begin. I bought a one-way ticket to a small coastal town in Italy, a place I had always dreamed of visiting, known for its artisans and craftsmanship. As I sat in the departure lounge waiting for my flight, I felt lighter. The burden of their expectations, the weight of their betrayal, was gone. I was free. My flight was just about to board when Michael called me. The moment of truth had arrived. "They're here," he said, his voice low and tense. He was watching from a distance, hidden in his car across the street from the workshop. "It's 11 a.m. They're early, just like we feared." I closed my eyes, picturing the scene, listening as Michael narrated the events. The final act was about to begin. "They look nervous," Michael continued. "David is pacing back and forth. Emily is checking her phone constantly. They look pale, scared. The sharks were circling. I imagined them walking up to the workshop doors, expecting them to be open, expecting me to be waiting with a check, expecting to be saved. "They're trying the doors," Michael said. "They're locked." The first crack in their arrogance. The first sign that things were not going according to their plan. "Why is it locked?" I heard Emily's voice faintly through the phone, sharp with annoyance and fear. "Maybe he's inside, counting the money," David replied impatiently. But his voice was shaky. He didn't believe his own words. "They're knocking," Michael narrated. "Now they're pounding on the doors, shouting your name. No answer." The workshop remained silent, a fortress guarding its secrets. They were trapped outside while their doom was waiting inside. Panic started to set in. The deadline was approaching. Their future was on the line. "They're checking the windows," Michael continued. "They're realizing you're not there." David is furious.
"He's kicking the door."
Then the escalation. "Wait," Michael whispered. Another car just pulled up. A large black sedan. 2 men inside. They looked like Sterling's men. The sharks had arrived, and they smelled blood in the water. "David sees them," Michael continued, his voice tense. "He's panicking. He looks terrified. He's getting something from his car. It's a tire iron." Desperation took over. Their greed was turning into rage and violence. The destruction their own making. It was unfolding exactly as I had planned, but the presence of Sterling's men added an element of unpredictability and danger. "He's breaking the office window," Michael said. The sound of shattering glass echoed through the phone, loud and violent. I heard Emily scream at him to stop. A flicker of hesitation, a realization that they were crossing a line. They could never uncross, but it was too late. Greed had pushed them over the edge. "David is climbing through the broken window," Michael said. "Emily is following him. They're inside." I could picture it. The empty workshop, the silence, the growing sense of dread. They were searching for me. Searching for the money, their footsteps echoing in the vast space. They were criminals now, not just embezzlers, burglars. They had sealed their fate. They had crossed the point of no return. "They're in the office," Michael whispered. "They see the box." I held my breath. This was it. I imagined them rushing towards it. The large, exquisitely crafted wooden box sitting on my desk. A masterpiece. They must have thought it contained the check, or cash, or the key to their salvation. Their greed blinded them to the beauty of the box, to the craftsmanship. They only saw the money. "They're trying to open it," Michael said. They tried to lift the lid. It was securely locked. The complex mechanism I had designed held firm. The puzzle box remained sealed. "They're getting frustrated," Michael said. A hint of satisfaction in his voice. "David is screaming at it. He's trying to pry it open with the tire iron." He was destroying the masterpiece, scratching the flawless finish, chipping the intricate carvings, a perfect metaphor for what they had done to my life, to my legacy. They destroyed beauty with their greed. Finally, in a fit of rage, David smashed the lock mechanism. He beat it until it broke, the delicate gears scattering on the floor, the wood splintering. "He opened it," Michael said. David lifted the lid, his eyes wide with greed, ready to plunge his hands into the fortune inside. And then, silence. A long, stunned silence. A silence that screamed louder than any shout. "What's happening?" I asked, my heart pounding. "They're just standing there," Michael said, his voice filled with awe. "Frozen. They're pulling things out of the box. It wasn't money. It was evidence. The evidence of their embezzlement. The bank statements, the emails, the witness testimonies Jake had provided. A detailed record of their crimes, laid bare for them to see. David is reading the papers," Michael said. "His face is pale, white as a sheet. He looks terrified. He knows it's over." Emily picked up the deed to the workshop. She looked at the name on the document. "Sarah. Sarah." I heard her whisper through the phone, confused, her voice cracking. "Who is Sarah?" And then she found the letter. The final message from the father she had betrayed. "She's reading the letter," Michael said. I knew the words by heart. I had written them with a mixture of sorrow and righteous anger. "Dear Emily and David," the letter began. "You asked for $500,000. You demanded my life savings, the fruit of my labor. You threatened my legacy, the business I built with integrity and passion. You thought I was weak. You thought you could take everything from me. But you forgot one thing. I am a craftsman. I build things to last, and I protect what I build. I have retired. I am leaving you with exactly what you deserve. The consequences of your own actions. The evidence of your crimes is in this box. I have also sent a copy to the authorities and to Mr. Sterling. The workshop, my legacy, is now in the hands of someone who understands its true value, someone who respects the craft. You built your life on lies and greed. Now watch it crumble. Goodbye, Robert." The realization hit them like a ton of bricks. They were ruined, exposed. They had lost everything. Their money, their reputation, their freedom, and their inheritance. And then they started screaming. It wasn't a scream of anger. It was a scream of despair, of terror, of utter devastation. The scream of someone realizing they had destroyed themselves, and there was no one else to blame. "The police are here," Michael said. The sound of sirens approaching in the background, growing louder and louder. "They're pulling up now, 2 cruisers. A stern-looking man in a suit got out. Detective Walker. I recognized the name from the news. He was known for being relentless in prosecuting financial crimes. "And Sterling's men are getting out of their car," Michael continued, his voice urgent. "They're walking towards the workshop. They look angry. The vultures had come home to roost. The cleanup had begun." I hung up the phone. My plane was boarding. I walked towards the gate, leaving the screams and the sirens behind. The fallout was swift and brutal. David was arrested on the spot. Embezzlement and fraud. Emily was charged as an accomplice. They were handcuffed and dragged out of the workshop they tried to steal. Sterling didn't just want his money back, he wanted revenge. He made sure the news of their crimes spread like wildfire, splashed across the headlines of every newspaper in the city. Their mugshots were everywhere. Their reputation was destroyed. Their lives dismantled. They lost everything. The house, the cars, the designer clothes. They were facing years in prison. Their future reduced to a courtroom and a jail cell. They had reaped what they had sown. Detective Walker found the evidence neatly compiled in the box. It was an open and shut case. My masterpiece had served its purpose. The workshop, however, thrived. Sarah, supported by Michael, took the reins of the business. With a grace and determination that exceeded my wildest expectations, she preserved my legacy of craftsmanship, continuing the tradition of quality and integrity. Miller's Custom Furnishings remained a beacon of honest work in a world consumed by greed. My legacy was safe, in better hands than mine. I settled in a small coastal town in Italy. The air was filled with the scent of the sea, and the sound of artisans at work. The pace was slower. The people were warmer. I rented a small studio. I started sketching designs for a new workshop, a smaller one, quieter, where I could teach the craft to a new generation of artisans. I was finally at peace. I often thought about Emily. The anger faded, replaced by a profound sadness. She was still my daughter. A part of me would always love the little girl who built birdhouses with me. I received a letter from her a few months later. From prison, she begged for forgiveness. She said she was sorry. I didn't reply, but I couldn't save her from herself. She had made her choice, and now she had to live with the consequences. I felt a mix of sadness and peace. I had lost my daughter, but I had saved my legacy, and myself. I looked out at the Mediterranean Sea, the sunlight sparkling on the water. I thought of Linda. I knew she would be proud. Family isn't just about blood. It's about respect, loyalty, shared values. Greed destroys everything it touches, rotting it from the inside out. But craftsmanship, integrity, and the beauty of honest work, those things endure. They last longer than a lifetime. I smiled. A real smile this time. I picked up a piece of olive wood, the grain warm and inviting, and started carving. My new life had just begun. Thanks for listening. Please rate our story in the comments. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe. Your support means a lot because your time matters.